All right, so I would like to welcome everyone to the virtual coffee club and start with a land acknowledgement. I'm a fourth generation European settler with distant Métis ancestry, and I'm humbled by the opportunity to live, work, and grow as a person on Treaty 4 territory, the homeland of the Métis. And as a programs and volunteer coordinator at the Western Development Museum, I would like to recognize the diversity of Indigenous people and continue to rebuild our relationship through reconciliation initiatives. I also just want to let you know that this is going to be recorded, so if you don't want your face or voice, just to put mute and your camera off, and then you can send messages in the group chat. And I would like to introduce um, Karin Steuber, our presenter today, Changing Perspectives One Page at a Time. Karin is the Public Outreach Coordinator for the Saskatchewan Archeological Society and an adjunct professor with the Department of Archaeology and Anthropology at the University of Saskatchewan. She's been an archaeologist for over 20 years, working across the Canadian Plains with a focus on lithic technologies. So I'll pass it off to her.
Great. Thank you so much, Alexis and Carla and the WDM for having me speak today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the book that our society recently put out. Let's see if it'll actually... Oh, now my Mac is being all funky. There we go. Let's see. Okay. There it is. I knew it was there somewhere. Okay, everybody can see that, hopefully. It's good. I won't mess with it anymore. So yes, I'm here today to speak about our newest publication, one that we're really, really proud of. It's been a long time in the making, as you'll find out, but good things come to those who wait, I guess. So I also have a land acknowledgement today. I want to acknowledge that the Saskatchewan Archaeological Society office is located in Treaty 6 territory, and we serve all of what is now known as the province of Saskatchewan, that's covered by treaties 2, 4, 5, 8, and 10 as well. This land is the territories of the Nehiawak, the Anasinapek, Nakota, Dakota, Lakota, Dene Sulina, and the Métis Michif nations. We recognize the treaty promise to share the land for the benefit of all has not been honored, and we acknowledge the role of archaeology in perpetuating colonial practices. We are committed to working with Indigenous people to build relationships for understanding and a better future. Okay, so in late 2022, the Saskatchewan Archaeological Society, or the SAS, published Points of View, a guide on Saskatchewan projectile points with Indigenous perspectives. Prior to this, no Saskatchewan-specific field guide existed to aid readers in the understanding and identification of projectile points. This is more than an identification guide. It contains chapters by Indigenous authors on the artistry of stone tools, the knapping knowledge systems used to create those stone tools, connections to the land, and the responsible curation of archaeological collections. So this presentation will highlight how the project came to be, the timeline, the team, the collaborative processes, the funding, promotional strategies, as well as how to evaluate if indeed the book does change perspectives. So these are the artifacts. Beautiful projectile points is the kind of all-encompassing term we use to describe these objects when found. They range from spear points, which are the earliest found in and around 10 to 12,000 years ago to date in Saskatchewan. It moves into atlatl or spear point technology with changing climate and animals that occurred on the plains. These are referred to as dart points or addle points or spear thrower points. And then finally, it moves into the smaller types of projectile points, more commonly known as arrowheads that we see in bow and arrow technology. So artifacts are the things made by people. Though archaeology is often portrayed in pop culture, so TVs, movies, books about discovery. Don't get me started on the History Channel and what they do with archaeology. It's about finding and perhaps keeping valuable relics of the past, but is it really? It's not. It's about understanding people and communities through their material culture, their stuff. It's important because it's only one way to learn and understand the past. Archaeology itself has a complicated past. It is colonial, it originated on a separate continent, and it's rooted in imperialism. It began during a time of conquest and nation building and developed alongside and as part of the theoretical concepts of evolution and cultural hierarchies. It placed European civilizations at the apex, with all other societies below that. Archaeology carries that baggage, and to remove itself from this, archaeologists of my generation were predominantly trained to view archaeology as a science, first and foremost. It makes sense. There's a lot of science, especially in the techniques and the methods used. It has strict rules, and it's meant to be unbiased. This meant I wasn't supposed to ascribe any type of humanistic characteristic to what I was studying. Projectile points weren't beautiful, handcrafted, or awe-inspiring works of art. They were 98 millimeters long, 43 millimeters wide, 21 millimeters thick. They displayed differing types of flake scars, evidence of collateral flaking techniques and basal grinding. This also makes it very impersonal. The object of study becomes disconnected from the people who made and or used it, and it has the potential to remove humanity from archaeology. Because remember, archaeology is about understanding the people through their material culture. This has been and continues to be a criticism. Archaeology is for archaeologists only. But as time changes, so too does our understanding and our perspectives, thankfully. There has been a mainstream shift in training, and we're seeing this in our studies in the next generation of archaeologists. And we no longer separate archaeological cultures as distinct or different and removed from present day Indigenous people. Now, I don't want to give the impression that archaeology had never included Indigenous people or perspectives. It had. There are many instances and examples of early collaborations with Indigenous peoples and communities. What is different now is the scope. It's following the nothing about us without us approach. It's about enacting Article 11 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which states that Indigenous peoples have the right to practice and revitalize their cultural traditions and customs. This includes the right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of their cultures, such as archaeological and historical sites, artifacts, designs, ceremonies, technologies, and visual and performing arts and literature. That's what we feel is different about this publication. It was a collaboration that incorporated Indigenous knowledge systems into archaeological practices. So the idea for a point guidebook had been around for a while, a Saskatchewan specific one. As early as 2013, when I first started with the Saskatchewan Archeological Society, my colleagues and I noted that there was no Saskatchewan projectile point guidebook. There was one for Manitoba, as you see on the screen, and one for Alberta, but not us. We all observed that these guidebooks were often the very first publication someone new to either archaeology or our organization would seek out. Record in Stone from Alberta was our #1 bestseller in our little online and physical store location at the office. American guidebooks are popular, right? Such as that Indian Arrowheads one. You can even find them in a lot of bookstores. Tracking Ancient Hunters and Light from Ancient Campfires by Trevor Peck were the kind of go-to books on archaeology on the plains with a little bit of Saskatchewan knowledge put in there. But Tracking Ancient Hunters is over 40 years old. And Light from Ancient Campfires is really focused on Southern Alberta archaeology. So we knew it couldn't be the same old thing, this book we were interested in producing, archaeology just for archaeologists. There had to be Indigenous inclusion, but we had no idea what that meant or what that might look like. So the seed, the SAS had a long-standing publications committee that was responsible for determining the types of books that our society could and should produce, such as our occasional paper series dealing with aspects of provincial archaeology, either specific sites or more generalized collections of papers. Our map of Saskatchewan archaeological sites, which is now in its second printing with about 25,000 recorded archaeological sites on it, and a number of other educational resources made available to members and teachers and interested people. In 2016, the Publications Committee was focused on promoting the third book occasional paper series, Cypress Hills Massacre, and excavations by Parks Canada at Farwell's Post near Fort Walsh, as well as finishing off the production of our trading card game, Trappers and Traders. The committee was at a place where it could start considering future projects. We talked about a projectile point guidebook with our friends and colleagues, brought it forward to the committee in late 2017. The committee agreed that it really couldn't move forward until we found Indigenous partners. It wouldn't be fair or in good faith to start the project and then invite them in. They had to be there at the beginning. At the time, SAS staff were heavily involved in working with archaeological collections and updating our educational resources. The availability of internships by the National Trust for Canada and the Canadian Museums Association through Young Canada Works spurred the Society to offer focused intern programs to recent graduates to help us update and expand what we could offer. Our first few interns were able to record and interpret a 3,000 plus artifact collection that is now housed at the Melfort District Museum, as well as revamp and modernize our archaeo kits. In 2018, we released Trappers and Traders, a fur trade card game, along with a teacher's guide that was tied to Saskatchewan educational curriculum for grades kindergarten to 12. It increased learning opportunities. With this done, we could now turn to considering a projectile point guidebook in more detail. It started with Gabriel Lamarche, who at the time was an SAS board member and a member of the Publications Committee, and he was keenly interested in this project. He understood the vision right from the start and recognized the authenticity of wanting to do this in the right way. Coupled with his expertise in flint knapping, which you'll see today in a short video, it was more than a no-brainer for him to be involved. I don't think he honestly would have let us continue if he wasn't involved heavily. We also knew Audrey Drever. She delivered a cultural perspectives workshop on projectile points for the Museums Association of Saskatchewan in 2012. She was an SAS member, and we'd been working with her on some of the archaeological collections housed at the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Center, where she was also working at the time. We asked, she was interested. There was also some in-house expertise. Our volunteer extraordinaire, Frank McDougall, who's a retired mining geologist, he was already brainstorming map mock-ups and rock identification. So by 2018, we had a working committee. There was still a lot unknown and a lot to do. We didn't know how to marry the different perspectives. Would they be different sections? Would Indigenous and archaeological ideas be presented alongside each other? Everyone agreed the need for an identification guide component, but it had to be more, and it needed to reach beyond the archaeology audience to include artists, Indigenous people, schools. There was a lot of discussion about whether to include other artifact classes. Do we touch on pottery? Do we talk about bones? Do we include groundstone tools, or is it just points? We did manage to settle the question. We'd start with points or projectile points and go from there. Would we publish the book ourselves or work with a publisher? What about illustrations and photos? What kind of point type chronology would we use? Because there's multiple ones out there. Who else needed to be involved? And who is actually going to write this thing? And how are we going to pay for it? That was a big question. These were really tough questions that we didn't have the answers to. So we put writing the book on the back burner while we explored the answers to these questions. This took some time. We met with other publishers. We looked at a lot of other books. The committee met, they had good discussions, and we finally narrowed down a flow to the book. So our team, the purpose was more than producing a guide for artifact identification. We packaged with this would be writing by Indigenous authors explaining their relationship to the objects. And by doing so, showing why it's so important to start reframing how we see collections. In a way, it's about meeting people where they're at. At the same time, our intent was to showcase the beautiful artifacts here in Saskatchewan. So we formed our core team. Audrey Drever, who is a Plains Cree artist whose family comes from Mistawassus and Atakakoop Cree nations. She's currently the program coordinator and an instructor in the Indigenous Communications and Fine Arts Department at First Nations University of Canada. Gabriel Essence Lamarche, who grew up around Georgian Bay on Lake Huron, has lived in Saskatchewan for about 15 years. Having witnessed a respectful exchange of information between an elder from his community and an archaeologist, he realized the traces of his ancestors were all around and he began flint knapping. He is now a master flint knapper, although he'll never admit that, but he is. He's amazing. He's currently a graduate student finishing his master's at the U of S in the Department of Anthropology. Frank McDougall, a retired mining geologist with a background in paleontology as well, but we don't hold that against him. He can still talk about dinosaurs in the office. He is our longest standing SAS volunteer. He publishes a regular column in the SAS Quarterly, and he was actually the initiator on publishing our history book in 2013 to celebrate our 50th anniversary. Maria Mampe is a proud member of Muscadet First Nation, and after an intense and lifelong interest in archaeology, she completed a master's degree in 2013. She's currently employed in consulting archaeology. Dr. Thomason Playford, the executive director at the SAS, who was our overall leader and project coordinator, and by training is really a zooarchaeologist. So she deals a lot with animal bones. And I wasn't all that interested in lithics, but I think we've convinced her that lithics is just as cool after doing this book. Belinda Rill Fitzsimmons is the business administrator at the SAS, who also has a degree in archaeology. She was the keeper of all things financial and an editorial guru. Brian Scribe of Nakota and Cree descent, he was one of the first Indigenous Master of Arts students at the U of S. Evelyn Siegfried, a member of the Big Stone Cree Nation in Alberta, she was the curator of ethnographic and archaeological collections at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum from 2008 until she retired in 2021. And myself, an archaeologist by training who specializes in lithic technologies on the plains. So there was no way I wasn't going to be involved with this book as well. So things have started coming together with the intention of making the point book our priority for 2020. In 2019, we explored what fair compensation was for authors, artists, an editor, layout, and design. We looked into costs for printing and marketing a 5,000 book print run. We came up with a budget and a detailed timeline and plan. Famous last words. We all know how 2020 went. We lost some momentum due to the pandemic, but it was meant to be. Decisions were made during this period on the chapter format and that we would self-publish the book. We also learned that a longtime SAS member, Edward Walker, had named the SAS as a beneficiary in his estate. This unexpected generosity and planned giving gave us the gift of this book. It meant we had some of our own funds to dedicate to the project, which is always helpful when applying for grants. Our first application to Creative Saskatchewan was a bit early, but it made us think of things like target market and production. We only missed the cutoff to get the grant by 2 points. They encouraged us to reapply, and we recommended that we decrease our 5,000 book print run down to 2,500. With this, we had a successful second application. We ran a membership campaign to support the book production, and we raised funds from that. We received sponsorship through companies like Canada North Environmental Services. And we even used some pictures of points they've found on various jobs, and the Saskatchewan Association of Professional Archaeologists. Through the Arts Vest mentorship program, we partnered with Globe Printers in Saskatoon, who agreed to provide in-kind sponsorship of the project. We also applied to external funding from agencies such as the Maclean Foundation, ICOMOS Canada, Young Canada Works and Canada Summer Jobs internships, as well as through the Cultural Human Resources Council to hire students and recent graduates to work on the book. So we have money. Finally, stuff's happening. We hired Faith Bozer, who you know is the editor of the book. She became our publications intern during 2021 and early 2022. So with funding from Young Canada Works Building Careers in Heritage and Canada Summer Jobs, Faith, a recent graduate from the U of S, was hired to serve as the editor. This is when the effort really started in the summer of 2021. Everyone who's been involved in this project, we're all in complete agreement that this publication would not have existed if it wasn't for Faith. She learned Adobe Creative Suite. She helped design the layout, color coordination of the sections. She wrote a lot of the text, took many of the photos, liaised with collections, archaeologists, curators, everyone to find the artifacts. Every artifact that is in the book is from Saskatchewan, or it's a replica, probably made by Gabe. An additional internship was granted to Matthias Chiefcalf, who became our virtual storytelling intern. He assisted with disseminating content to a variety of audience through social media and helping with online marketing. Cheyenne Lepka was our artist when we put out a call for an Indigenous artist for about 40 line drawings. And this was partially funded by an ICOMOS Canada wage subsidy. So the product, the cover art, this was a really hard decision. We knew what we didn't want, right? All the other projectile point books you see out there, it's a picture of a point on the cover. So very typical, very plain Jane. We didn't want that. We wanted to be different, but we didn't know what else. We were really hoping something would jump out and speak to us. We worked with Tim Neal, who is an Indigenous graphic designer and artist in Saskatoon. He's worked in all forms of media. His work is usually layered with culture, vernacular, and irreverence. And you can see it in this image that he's designed for us. It places landscape at the center, and archaeology is our window to understanding. It includes both plains and boreal forest biomes, and the night and day reflects the passing of time. So very nuanced, very beautiful. The minute we saw it, we were like, that's it. The table of contents. The placement of Indigenous authors chapters first is deliberate. These chapters are followed by a guide section. So that's kind of how the book will flow. It ends with a few other chapters on other stone tools as well as lithic raw materials, understanding how to care for archaeological heritage, as well as things you usually find in a book like a bibliography, a terminology section, and biographies of the contributors. So the product again. Stones are sacred beings, and projectile points are transformations from the landscape. They are sculpted and deliberately shaped. They are artistic. You can't help but look at some of these artifacts and just note their beauty and how a lot of care and attention went into making these tools. So they are artistic. Audrey Drever places Indigenous art in the political context of Eurocentric notions of fine arts and how this notion of what is and isn't art was imposed on Indigenous cultures. And it disconnected important artworks from Indigenous artists, whether that artwork was sacred or secular. Gabriel's chapter explains the complex, intricate, and highly challenging physics and geometry of flint knapping. It's more, so much more than bashing two rocks together. He eloquently and very skillfully describes the mechanisms of flint knapping, but it's easier to understand when you see it. It's why we also included videos. There's a QR code in the publication that takes readers to videos of Gabe creating several of the point styles from the book. These videos were created by Matthias, who is also a mixed media artist that we were able to hire. Again, due to that infusion of funding for youth employment during the pandemic. So that's one of the projects he worked on for us. The third chapter is an interview between Gabriel and Brian Scribe. As I mentioned, Brian was one of the first Indigenous archaeologists in the province of Saskatchewan. He tells his story of where he comes from, the importance of the landscape in understanding the past. What shines through in Brian's interview is how Indigenous people's history is visible on the land, if you know what you're looking for. How the artifacts and sites tell a story of many different people being here. Brian also shares the challenges he's faced, being asked to do things he didn't feel comfortable doing. He's hopeful for the future and continues to share his knowledge with the youth in his community. Evelyn's chapter stresses the importance of responsible stewardship. She brought understanding of artifact collection and legislation to explain where artifacts go once they're excavated and how people with personal collections can be responsible stewards. Again, this is one of the reasons the book is needed now, so people know that options exist for them with collections. But really, it's the guide section, right, that's going to draw people to this book. It starts with explaining how archaeologists interpret sites and artifacts and how points are categorized. So why we use the terminology that we do. So this is where the science starts coming back in. It includes projectile point types from both the plains and the boreal forest and the taiga zone. This is something else we wanted, for the book to represent the entirety of the province. Often point guides tend to be biased towards the plains. We wanted to make sure that there was northern representation. The book also discusses the physical environment at various points through time, including ecozones and climate. So you can get an idea of why these points are formed the way they are and what type of animals certain points are being used to hunt with. There's a timeline that highlights not only archaeological periods, but what's happening at a local, national, and global scale, as well as environmental conditions. So this was a lot of fun to put together as well. So here is the guidebook portion, right? And just a few kind of page snippets of what we have in the book. So each point type has a line drawing drawn by Cheyenne and a listing of its distinctive traits. You'll see that in the shaded box there. So the type site, where it was first identified. Many of these points have Saskatchewan names such as Avonlea, Besant, even Mortlach, and that's because they were first found in this province. So it tells you the type site, the average length, the average width, the kind of typical rock materials that these points would be made from, and some major archaeological sites in the province where the points have been found. So just some major ones. They've been found in a lot more than what is listed there. There's a descriptive write-up for each point type and the map that shows its current distribution. So that's key there, current distribution. Just because The shading on the map may not go as north or east, west, or south. It's not because the point and the people who made it didn't exist in that area. It's just that they have not been recovered yet from that area. So this is always subject to revision, as is most of archaeology. Whenever we could, we included a variety of examples to highlight variability that can exist within each point time. And this is something we saw in the other point guidebooks too, is they show you the idealized perfect version of the points. And how often do you find that? Not very often. You find sometimes the cruddier versions, the not as well made, either because the craftsmanship wasn't the same or the material wasn't as good as other points are being made from. So we wanted to show a variety so that people could see what's out there and realize, that even within one particular point type class, there can be a wide range of sizes and form as well. So we also have a section, as I mentioned, on other stone tools, cores, mauls, drills, things like that, as well as different lithic raw material types, right? This is going to help people identify what they have there. And then I'm also going to show you quickly one of these videos that's on our YouTube channel that was put out by Gabe and Matthias.
Reduce the piece down, removing a lot of irregularities, tuning up the symmetry, and then I'll tune that into a prairie side notch. What I'm doing here is I'm getting rid of the fineness of the edge. It's a little bit counterintuitive sometimes to think I have to make it duller in order to make it sharper. But in order to shape it, I have to make it so that the edge can support the amount of force I'm about to load into it to tear off the larger size of flakes I want to tear off. Okie dokie. So lots of people are a little bit surprised that you can tear rock with bone or antler because they think rock is so hard. It has a very particular kind of hardness. It's very strong in particular ways. It's strong in compression but weak in tension. So it takes a lot of force to crush a rock, but you can snap a rock fairly easily. And so flint knapping is in some ways tearing the stone in line. Even more important than sort of the symmetry of mass of the overall piece, that edge should be in line. Tree of notches probably isn't totally crucial for the functionality of the finished piece, but it, for the plain side notch makers, they did seem to put a little bit of extra care into getting that symmetry very close. Work and then snap it all off, mashing the point in your hand.
So you can see from that video how easy Gabe makes it look. You just take a piece off here, there, and boom, you have a finished plain side notch point. But as you will read in his chapter, it does very much take a good understanding of the geology of the rock, as well as the physics involved in removing those flakes or pieces of stone. All right, the final chapter of the book is meant to dispel some of the myths and misconceptions people might have around personal artifact collections. We've heard time and time again that there's a fear that if you admit that you have a collection of artifacts, especially projectile points, that they will be taken away. This is not true, and we don't want people to believe this anymore. We want people to think about where these items are going to go in the future, especially if there's no interested family member. These items are the tangible pieces of Indigenous history. They are relatives. They deserve to be cared for and respected as such. I don't know how many times people have said to me, or many farmers have collections because they found it on the land, right? That's how the majority of the archaeology in this province is known, is from landowners finding things out in the fields. If anything, we just want to know what's out there, right? Just so we can put a dot on the map, just so we can have an understanding of how people have moved across the landscape, right? Nobody is going to take these collections away. It's what will happen to them once this person is gone. We don't want to see them ending up in a garbage, right? They shouldn't be going to auctions. The Heritage Property Act that does exist makes it illegal to buy, sell, or trade archaeological artifacts, right? These things were made in Saskatchewan. They should stay in the province. And in a perfect world, should be repatriated to Indigenous communities. So there's also a section on language usage, preferred terms and those that are no longer deemed acceptable, a terminology section to explain some of the archaeology words used throughout the books, because that's how you tell some of the different point types apart, is by using these really academic terms that, aren't necessarily easily understood. And finally, a bibliography section for interested readers to explore archaeology and stone tools in detail. So this is where we pulled a lot of the information in the guidebook section from. So if you ever wanted a crash course in lithic or stone tool technologies, this bibliography is going to be the go-to for that. So the promotion. With Creative Saskatchewan's help to clarify marketing and media, we started with our membership and a fundraising campaign. We raised over $5,000 from 33 SAS members. We highlighted this in our membership newsletter, the Saskatchewan Archaeology Quarterly, which goes out 4 times a year. We expanded advertising to archaeological audiences. So we sent postcards to the Canadian Archaeological Conference that was held in Edmonton, and the Society for American Archaeological Conferences that's usually held in a number of US states. So wherever we could, we promoted the book. There were print ads in professional publications, so Society for American Archaeology Archaeological Record, the Plains Anthropological Society Journal. We also put print ads further afield. Eagle Feather News, you might have seen it. Prairie Books Now, even Canadian Cowboy Country, we ran a print ad. Prairie's North magazine, and of course, Read Saskatchewan. We coupled this with a social media campaign promoting the book contents and some of the artifacts showcased in the book, as well as the individual authors. Now, sometimes our timing was off a little bit. We had this countdown clock that was hopefully going to count down to the launch, but we were maybe a little too ahead of ourselves, so we basically counted it down to the table of contents. But it worked. It was neat, and it was Matthias who actually came up with the idea. Finally, we came up with some promotional swag. 12 distinct bookmarks of points from the books. I love bookmarks. I love how every time I go to McNally Robinson, I get a free bookmark with my book. These bookmarks include not only information about the book, so how to buy it, how to contact us, but a little archaeological tidbits on them too. So then we went out and we promoted. We started with tables at Word on the Street in Saskatoon, the Festival of Words in Moose Jaw. We had a sneak peek event in September 2022 during Book Week. At these events, we tried to have a hands-on component. Most of the time, it was Gabe demonstrating flint knapping, because that's how you draw crowds, is with Gabe and his extraordinary skill set. We also had Evelyn Siegfried talking about collections and curation at book events. Once the book finally came out, we revamped up all these events into book launches at a number of different places, both in Saskatoon, Regina, Capel, Humboldt, across the province. So the results. Assessing success of a project like this can be done in a number of different ways. There's the various obvious results in terms of sales. How many books did we sell? We sell the both in our physical store as well as through our online store. roughly right now, we've sold about 1,000 books, so almost 40% of our print run directly. So that's great. And we're hoping now, as we're getting closer to the holiday season, we can ramp up those sales. We've also distributed another 350 or so books to over 20 third-party distributors. So this includes bookstores such as McNally and Coles, independents such as Penny University in Regina. We also sell through SAS Books. We have them in museum gift shops throughout the province and some local community museums. They're being sold at other archaeological centers, such as the Bodo Archaeological Society near Provost, Alberta, as well as the Calgary Center of the Archaeological Society of Alberta, which is just icing on the cake that now they're selling our book and it's being bought after years of us selling their book. So, and they love it too. And they're a bit jealous, to tell you honestly, that we came up with this really amazing book with Indigenous inclusion and they hadn't yet. So we kind of one up them in that cases. We're also selling them at independent places such as garden centers and with a woman up in Meadow Lake known as Brenda through her kind of online store. We work with our 7 chapters throughout the province to sell the book, and they can use it as a fundraiser for their organizations. We have the opportunity to work with our team members to promote it through their avenues. So Matthias is now at Saskatchewan Heritage Park. Audrey at First Nations University. Cheyenne is now in Calgary. And Faith is going to school in Edmonton, so they can promote it in their own social networks. We issued a press release in early April, and we had a reporter from the Regina Leader Post run an article. That led to a bump in sales. This was followed up by a phone interview on the morning edition with Stephanie Langenegger, which also helped to bring awareness to book launches. We have applied for awards, and we're still applying for awards, and we've won some of them. So we got the Canadian Archaeological Association's Public Communications Award this year, as well as an award from the Museums Association of Saskatchewan. So these are activities that take time and effort applying for the awards, but we do see a return if we're successful. We've learned this with our success with Trappers and Traders, the card game, after it won numerous awards too. So it just helps to continue to spread the word. Because ultimately, while sales are great and awards are amazing, they're not the goal. This is where we want to see qualitative results. So the objectives were about making archaeological information accessible to all, including Indigenous people and communities, increasing awareness of Indigenous sovereignty, so that UNDRIP Article 11, promoting responsible stewardship of archaeological resources, and providing resources on how to have responsible stewardship. So we'll know if we're meeting our objectives if, one, we see an uptake amongst non-archaeologists, which I think we have, since a lot of our book sales are going to just people with an interest in archaeology. If we create school connections, right? Tying it into educational curriculum like our other products have been. So we're working with land-based learning and cultural camps to include an archaeological component, and I think this book can definitely help with that. We're going to see this through reviews. Do people like it? Professional reviews from other archaeologists are great, and there seems to be a general like for the book, but we also want to hear from non-archaeologists. Like, do people like it? Do they like what we've done? Is it helpful? As well as informal feedback through emails, conversations, like, shares, comments on social media and on the website. So one thing is, with that UNDRIP Article 11 and with our society's goals towards reconciliation, have we worked towards these authentically with this book? So in order to figure that out, there's a need for surveys. So we took a membership survey in 2019. We specifically asked our members their understanding or their familiarity with reconciliation and the Truth and Reconciliation Committee calls to action. So next year will be roughly 5 years. We're going to ask the same question and include a question about our book. right? Has that helped? Has that helped them better understand reconciliation, right? We're also going to be doing some more formal surveys with non-members on their experiences, not only using the book, but in terms of reconciliation and the TRC. So we cannot produce a book like this without acknowledgements, right? So in the book, we acknowledge those people who have provided expertise, who have reviewed the book, who have provided photos to be included into the book, as well as all the donors that contributed towards the production of the book. We also want to thank sponsors such as SAPA, or the Saskatchewan Association of Professional Archaeologists, Can North, Globe Printers, Young Canada Works and Canada Summer Jobs through their funding of student positions, the McLean Foundation, of course, the estate of Edward Walker, Globe Printer, Creative Saskatchewan, and numerous other granting agencies. The major granting came from Creative Saskatchewan, so we couldn't have done it without them. And as always, SaskCulture, who provides our operational funding that allows us to do what we do, not only produce books, but education and outreach throughout the province. And that comes through the Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund for Sport, Culture, and Recreation. So that's the book in a nutshell. Would we do it again? Absolutely. Would we hope we've learned from the creation of this book, things that we would do differently in the future? Organization is key, but it doesn't matter how many timelines, budgets, and to-do lists you have. Things are always going to come up, and timelines will have to be shifted and manipulated a little bit. But in the end, despite all the issues we might have had getting it from its first kind of inkling of the idea in 2013 to its actual publication in 2022, these things happen for a reason. And if we can produce more works like this, then I think that's just a feather in the cap of the society itself. So if you're interested in learning more about the SAS, I've got up on the screen here how to contact us physically, email, phone, through the website, or through our social media channels. We're always happy to talk with people about archaeology in the province and get out there and meet people and see what kind of interesting things that there may be.
So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Karin, for presenting. This was amazing.
Thank you for having me.
And everyone have a great rest of your day. So if you guys want, next month, November 26th, we'll have behind the scenes the WDM, the collections department, with Julie Jackson at 10 a.m.